Hey everybody, this is Dean, and today I'm going to do a basic overview of the program Scrivener. Now, Scrivener is a program that's supposed to help you write nonfiction and fiction books in other larger works or works of literature or writing where it's hard to organize just using Word. So when we look at Scrivener, there's a couple of metaphors we can look at that kind of helps us describe what it is or understand what it is and what it's doing. One is if you look at a program like OneNote or like Evernote that is kind of a notebook program where you can save notes in different sections and different documents together. So that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is it's also very similar to your operating system where you have folders and files. And so that kind of simplifies the entire concept of it. So that's the base metaphor that it's going for. So what I'm going to do is, instead of showing you like the novel templates or the nonfiction templates first, we're going to start with a blank template. And that way we kind of build from the start so you can see how it works. And then we'll look at another template like a novel template and explain further how it works. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the tools and stuff that are in Scrivener in this video. I'm going to make some other videos that go into other sections and tools within it and how to use it in a more advanced way. But in this video you should get just kind of the basics of how it works so you can navigate it and you can actually start using it. So the first thing we're going to do is I am going to go over here and I'm going to go new project, and it's going to give us a choice of different projects here, and these are different sections. We can look at everything. If we click on this, we can look at fiction. In fiction we have a novel or a novel with parts in it. So the novel starts out with chapters, and the novel with parts I think has different sections and then chapters within those sections, and it even has a short story. We can do the same with nonfiction, and we even have a nonfiction book here, just a basic thing. We even have script writing, which has a few things in it formatting wise that makes it easier to write different types of scripts and such. So we're going to start with a blank right here because it's totally basic, and it's the easiest way to start out, and it's less confusing, I think, that way. So let's create a blank book here, or a blank project, and I'm just going to entitle this, let's just call it book. So we're going to save that. Now, if you had a title already for your book, that's probably what you would use to name the file as well. So you can name it whatever you want. So as an example, I'm going to actually take the Brothers Grimm fairy tales because it's in the public domain and I can get it off of Project Gutenberg, and I can paste some of the text in there so it will be easier to understand what's going on. So up here where it says draft, you can name this whatever you want. If you're creating a template, you might just name it novel or manuscript, but since we already have a title here, we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to start off with the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, which is the title of the book that we're writing or editing. You can even consider it editing. In this case, we didn't write it. You can also, if you have documents or Word files or any files that you've been working on a book or a novel, you can actually cut and paste them into here. You don't have to start out in Scrivener. Scrivener is a way you can type and write within it, just like a regular word processor, but it's here to help you organize. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out over here, and we have our first document right here, and I'm going to name it Chapter 1. You can name it whatever you want, obviously. You can name it Chapter 1, or you could put a title, an actual title there. So we have, if we click on Brothers Grimm, you see that we have one chapter here. So we can go up here and we can go to Add. Now we can add text, or we can add a new folder. If we wanted to split this up into sections, we could add a folder and move the documents into separate sections. We're going to just do another text document. I'm going to put Chapter 2 in there, and let's put a Chapter 3 in there as well. So you can start to add these things in here, and if we go back up and click on Brothers Grimm, you can see that we can see each chapter or document in kind of a grid format here. We can also go up here. These icons up here will change our view, and so if we go to this particular view, actually I'll show you that in a minute. That will show you everything you've written thus far in all of the chapters. If we go over to this view, we can actually put the status of the chapters right here. So if it's to do, or if it's in progress, we can put that. And so we can use this chart to look to see what we've done. If it's done, we can put done as well. Or we could put final draft if we wanted to, or revised draft, or first draft. So we can put the status of it. We can also go over here under label, and there are these different colored labels that we can use. We can actually rename these labels to different things too. So we can use that as another way to organize. Let's go back to the grid here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go over here to the left, and I'm going to click on Chapter 1, and now we're in Chapter 1. And I am going to cut and paste some text from another document I have. And this is the first story in the Brothers Grimm, in this case. And I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to rename this. I'm going to leave this as Chapter 1. In fact, let's take out Chapter 1 in this case. And let's just call it the name of the story, which is The Golden Bird. So we can have any, once again, we can have any title there. So now we're going to go over to 2, and I'm going to grab another story here. And I'm going to just go ahead and put in the text here. And then we're going to go over to 3. And I'm going to leave Chapter 3 in front of that. This is just to give you an example. You would name these consistently, generally. So you would put like Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, or Chapter 1 in a title, and so on. So this is the traveling musicians we're going to put in here. And so we're going to go into here and we're going to paste that in as well. So now if we go back up here to where it says Grimm's Fairy Tale, which is our entire manuscript, or our entire book or novel, you can see that we have the different chapters here. And in this case, we've just named the chapter. In this in this case we just have it's chapter 2. In this case we have it's chapter 2 with the name in it. So I could go back to this, for example, and I could add chapter 1 to make it consistent. Maybe I don't have a name for this yet, so I'm going to leave that as chapter 3. Now the nice thing about this is we could just start writing a chapter, and as we're writing chapters we could also add a new document because we know there's going to be a chapter in there. So we can kind of use this whole thing, so we can use this to kind of outline what we're doing, and we can do it as we're working, or we can do it all in advance. The other thing is, if I decide at some point I want to move a chapter around, I can move it around by dragging and dropping it. So now we have it as 1, 3, 2, or 1, 2, 3, however you want to do that. If we go over, select chapter 2 here, if we go up here, there's a little blue dot over here that has an I in it, and we can go into the chapter synopsis. And what we can actually do here is, you can see by default it's put in like the first paragraph or something of the document you've written. If you want to put like a synopsis there, we can say this is the second story about a goose, for example. I don't even know if that's what the story is, because we're just cutting these out as an example. And we can also put notes here. So you can put any sort of note on there, so that when you come back as you're writing it, if you put a note in there, you can actually go put a note in there so to remind you to go back and do something. Like maybe you need to research something in this, and so you can put a note there that you need to add some information once you find out what that information is. Now if we go back into chapter 2 right here, you can see we have this note in the synopsis over here, and we can make it appear or disappear by hitting this I right here. So we can add these from within the chapter. So we could put a note here, final chapter, or whatever we want to put in there, we can put in there. And we can view it from within the document, and we can view it by just highlighting the chapter and looking down over on this side as well. So that's a very useful tool. Now that we have 3 chapters in here, now we can go back to up here. So we have the grid here, and we have this layout that kind of gives us the status of everything in the chapters here. But if we go to this first one, it actually merges everything that you have together so far. And you can actually go in here, and you can see the dotted line splits up where each document starts. And if we click on here, you can see that we've selected chapter 2, and we can go into here and work on that document. So that's basically the basis of how it organizes things under each of these sections. And so the metaphor is, once again, a folder and a text document are the primary metaphors. You can also add existing files or a web page, which would be a link to a web page. But typically that would be for the research area. So in the research area, we could add a folder or text. And we could also add a web page. If we did that, it would give us a place to put the address or the URL and then the title of that. We can also go here and we can add an existing file. An existing file could be a picture, an audio file, or a video. And generally we would do that in the research section, because it gives us media or whatever that we can can use as a reference as we're working on a novel or a nonfiction work. So if there's an audio file of some quote that you wanted to use, you could put it in there. If there was a picture of something you wanted to use for a scene, you could put it in there. But you could also have a section where you had settings or where you're at, or locations where you're at, where you could put pictures as well. So if we go into here, we could go down and we could select an image, input it in there, and as you can see, it's brought the image in so we can see that. So we could have a series of things here under research as well. The other thing that we can do is we can go up here and we can go add new folder, or and let's just call this section 1. And then let's add another folder and call it section 2. So now we have chapters here in sections, and so we can actually drag these into well, here we would move it around. We actually had to go over here to the left. So if we wanted to drag this into section 1 and drag this into section 2, we could do that as well. And then we could go and look under each one of these for the chapters. Once again, we can reorder them however we want to reorder them. And so you can use this to organize kind of an outline and move around chapters as you're writing them, or put in a document and put a synopsis for it before you even write it. And then you can also once again go over to here, and then by default it would be no status, but you can put it on to do or in progress, so you know that you either have to write it, or you're working on it, or it's finished, or it's the second draft, or whatever. Alright, so now what we'll do is we'll look real quick at another template. And we're going to go to new project, and this time we're going to go under fiction, and we're just going to go under novel, which is just a basic novel, and let's just name it novel in this case. And so it actually has up here a little document that tells you about the template and all of that. We're not going to go into the specifics of this template. But right now, you can see that we have a chapter, and we have scenes under the chapter. So this chapter is just a folder. In the chapter split up into scenes. So you could write these in separate documents, so you could move the scenes around within a chapter if you wanted to. If you wanted to simplify that and just have each chapter as a document, you can do that as well. And what we would need to do is we would click here and go move to trash. And so that's move this folder in the scene, the default scene, down into the trash here. So we can go up to manuscript, and we can add new text, create a chapter, however you want to organize that. So now it's organized differently. It's organized that each chapter is a separate file. So there's a lot of flexibility about the way you do this. And just remember, the metaphor is folders and files. It's just like in your file system. Now we have some extra things here. So if I right click on here, you'll notice we can add text and new folder, and we can add existing files. In this section, it won't allow us to do a web page, but it will in research. But we have two other things here that we can add: character sketch and setting. In this particular template, we have characters and places. So in characters, we could right click and we could go add character sketch, and it creates a text document, but it gives us kind of a template here with some headings that we should fill in what their role is in the story, their age, their goals, their physical description, etc. So this is kind of like a character template that we can use. If we go into places, we can do a similar thing. We can add setting sketch, and it will ask about the location, the season, the description, sights, sounds, smells, notes. So it kind of gives you a template to work off of, so you can kind of consistently and briefly put out these particular sections, so you have a reminder of basically the places that you're using within your novel. We won't go through all of these sections, but it has such things in here as front matter, which would include like the title page, and it already has a format for that. You may or may not want to use that. Having all of these sections, so for instance with the manuscript, we can actually put out the entire manuscripts or sections of the manuscripts into a final format. Like we could bring it all into Word or another program for when we submit it to be published or when we publish it. But we'll go over that in a different video. I wanted just to give you in this video a good overview and show you how the basic kind of metaphors the interface uses and how the interface works in a more simple way before you go into things that have more complex templates. Just remember, it's always folders and files, and those are the two things that you're working with. So that's the video for today. I will see you next time, and have a great day.